Right now, we speak with North Texas Republicans who support different presidential candidates before the first in the nation Iowa caucuses. Fond farewell, President Joe Biden comes to Dallas to pay tribute to trailblazing Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson. One-on-one, State Representative Carl Sherman of DeSoto tells us why he's giving up his safe seat in the Texas House to run in the crowded Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics starts right now. Hello and welcome. The race for the White House is set to kick into high gear, at least for Republicans. After months of campaigning, the first in the nation Iowa caucus is set for Monday. The Real Clear Politics average for polls for Iowa shows former President Donald Trump maintaining a big lead, more than 35 percentage points over second place. He's got 52.2%, while former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley now at 16.6%, slightly surpassing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's at 16.4%. Tech billionaire Vivek Ramaswamy is at 7%. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has dropped out. So we thought it would be fun to speak with North Texas Republicans who are in the grassroots about the candidates they support for the Republican presidential nomination. And so we're speaking with Jonathan Booz, who supports Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. We're speaking with Orlando Salazar, who supports former President Donald Trump. Tina Avalos, who supports Nikki Haley. We are also speaking with Sanjay Narayan, who supports Vivek Ramaswamy. And I want to thank you all for joining us and being part of our conversation. So thank you so much. Jonathan, we'll start with you. Why do you support DeSantis?
Jack, thanks so much for having us on and doing this discussion. I'm a very conservative Republican here in the Dallas area. For Mr. DeSantis, when he jumped in the race, I've been following him for quite a while as governor of Florida. I think he's, for a couple reasons. He's number one, just such a great governor down in Florida. He has a strong record of fiscal conservatism, so reducing government spending, reducing the debt in Florida, and I think he'd be able to do that at the federal level. Secondly, I think he's a man of great integrity and decency and honesty, which is something that I really care a lot about in a public figure. And then number three, which is very important, I think he has the best chance to beat Joe Biden in the fall. He's done a great job turning Florida red, and he'll be able to make the race about Joe Biden and Joe Biden's record, not about things in the past.
We'll keep going down on the boxes. Sanjay.
Thanks for having us, Jack. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm a conservative attorney here in Dallas, worked for Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz in the past. And the reason I'm supporting Vivek is, listen, I think all four of the candidates who are being supported by each of us would be a tremendous improvement over the current administration. So we're really talking about finite differences between the candidates. But I think what this country is really seeking and yearning for is a cause, a source of national unity, and someone who is a clear and concise expositor of conservative principles and values. And I think Vivek is by far the best communicator in the field left. I mean, he has really touched on the nerve that's really dividing this country, which is, are we going to be a country that values meritocracy, equality under the law, due process, freedom of speech? And he's written books about it. He's been a successful businessman. And I think we need that type of acumen in the White House, somebody with the charisma, somebody with the communication skills to be able to defend conservative principles, both domestically and regarding our foreign policy articulately. And I think Vivek is the best encapsulation of that. Of course, again, I'd be more than happy to support any of the candidates here, but given the stage of the campaign that we're at, I think Vivek presents the most positive.
Tina, why are you supporting Nikki Haley?
Look, like millions of other moms across America, I'm struggling with skyrocketing costs. I'm a mom of 7, and that is what's making a difference in my vote this time around. And I know that a candidate like Nikki Haley gets that. She understands that. And she is someone who has answers for crushing these crazy bad economics they're calling Bidenomics. She's also, I think she's surging, as we can all see. But one of the other things, I think Americans in general are looking for sanity, and they're looking for a candidate who can bring sanity to the White House again. And so this is what Nikki Haley is bringing forth. And we're seeing that the more people get to know her, the more they like her, the more they hear her policies and positions, the more they're embracing them over the other candidates. And so that's why I'm excited to see and support Nikki Haley.
And Orlando, why are you supporting the former president, Donald Trump?
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate the opportunity. Just over a year ago, I was in Florida at an event where both the former president and Mr. DeSantis, Governor DeSantis, were going to speak. At the end, right the day of the event where they were both going to speak, Governor DeSantis spoke, and former President Trump called in on the phone. And Governor DeSantis spoke in person. He came out first. And of course, we were all very impressed with him. He was terrific. But after he finished, the president came on the phone, and they put it over the loudspeakers in the big banquet hall that we were in. And he, on the phone, outshone Governor DeSantis in person. And at that point, I was very open to having Governor DeSantis, represent the party. But when I saw that President Trump was able to outshine the governor on the phone with DeSantis in person, I just saw that it was going to be obvious who our candidate eventually was going to be, because the former president really was remarkable on the phone versus DeSantis in person.
And, one of the points that we're hearing now, of course, in a primary is who can beat President Biden in November, right? That's what this whole process is about. Why do you each think that your candidates can beat Biden in November? And we'll start with Orlando, and we'll work our way back up.
Well, I think he beat him the last time around. I feel like there was some tampering with what happened with elections. Of course, nothing was ever proven, but I really believe he did win. And he has a proven track record. He was terrific the first time around. He fulfilled a lot of the promises that he said he was going to do. He moved our embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, which many presidents had promised to do, and he actually did it. He shut down the border. Our economy was terrific. He rebuilt our military. I mean, there are just so many accomplishments that he achieved. He's a proven track record. Yeah, we're not crazy about some of his verbal skills, but he has a proven track record.
Tina.
Yeah, I mean, look, as I said earlier, poll after poll is showing that Nikki Haley is surging because she is a voice of reason in this fray, and that is what Americans are looking for. And the way that we're seeing this, we're looking at some critical swing states that are going to decide the vote, and poll after poll is showing that Nikki Haley will be the one who could beat Joe Biden in those critical swing states.
Sanjay.
I think President Trump has a fantastic record to run on, which is one of the ironies of this, because I think Vivek is actually one of the best defenders of President Trump's legacy, securing the border, the fastest growing economy in the prior 40 years. I mean, from the day Donald Trump left office through today, real median household income is down. Real median household wages are down. The level of wage acceleration has not kept up with the average rate of inflation across the country. And by any objective metric, Americans are worse off today domestically as well, not even speaking of the type of dangers that we're now facing across the globe than the day Donald Trump left office. What's ironic about that is I think Vivek is one of the best defenders of that legacy and has the ability to not only defend that, but also move America first to the next iteration, which is how do we bring the country together by addressing what is really at the core, the crux of the issue, a loss of national identity. How can we be unified in returning this country to its original principles, making sure that we're not dividing people on the basis of race, making sure that we're not dividing people on their basis of their external characteristics, but what really unites us, what is going to move this country forward? And I think that's the reason why he would, all of our candidates, I think, have a very good chance of beating Joe Biden in the fall. But I think Vivek presents one of the best options for doing so.
And Jonathan, your thoughts, please.
Yes, I agree with Sanjay that I think all of our candidates have a good shot at beating Joe Biden in the fall. I think Ron DeSantis is best positioned to do that for a couple of reasons. First, I think he's one of the few candidates that can unite both the Donald Trump wing of the party and then the maybe Nikki Haley, Chris Christie wing of the party, kind of in a little bit of a common ground. Second, he has a demonstrated history of doing really well, even in this last election in 22, when Republicans were supposed to have a red wave and it was more like a red ripple. Ron DeSantis won his reelection and overwhelmingly in the state of Florida. So between those two things and just his record that he's able to run on and being able to just relate to kind of an average person, I think he's going to be the strongest candidate in November against Joe Biden.
And you can watch the full discussion on our website, cbsnewstexas.com. Coming up, President Joe Biden is among the Democratic leaders who paid tribute to trailblazing Dallas Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson. Then later, we go one-on-one with State Representative Carl Sherman of DeSoto about why he is giving up his safe seat in the Texas House to run in the crowded Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas. We'll be right back.
What exactly is the law that some say could disqualify former President Donald Trump from running for office again? It's Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and it was passed just after the Civil War ended. Its goal was to stop the men who held roles in the Confederacy, aka engaged in insurrection or rebellion, from being elected to the U.S. executive or judicial branches. 2 states have now removed Trump from the ballots in their states, arguing that his actions leading up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol amount to engaging in insurrection or rebellion. So how often is this section of the Constitution asserted? A New Mexico County Commissioner was removed from office in September 2022 under the amendment. It was the first time since 1865 that a court disqualified an elected official over the insurrection rule. The insurrection rule has never been used on a presidential candidate. In September, Trump dismissed the insurrection rule, saying it has no legal basis or standing in connection to the 2024 election.
Welcome back. Now to tributes for a trailblazer, longtime Dallas Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, who died on New Year's Eve at the age of 89. President Joe Biden traveled 1,500 miles to pay his respects to the North Texas political icon. After stepping off Air Force One at Dallas Love Field, he went to Concord Church Monday night, where he met with her family members and other Democratic leaders who were there for her prayer service. He placed his hand on her casket and said a prayer. One day later, other dignitaries paid their respects during her funeral, as Steve Pickett reports.
I was Lord. Our matriarch is gone.
But it is because of her that I have this opportunity.
A celebration of her life's work, a tribute to her Texas trailblazing. This funeral for former Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson would be an array of verbal awards and anecdotes from power brokers state and nationwide.
Today we gather to remember a great American leader.
Video tributes from Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Bill Clinton would leave the trail of a 3-hour tribute inside Dallas's Concord Church. From her grand and great-grandchildren to leaders of the halls of Congress, all speaking to the legacy of Johnson's 5 decades of political leadership in the State House and Capitol Hill. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, the daughter of President Lyndon Johnson, and so many more. But it was Dallas mayors, the former mayor Ron Kirk and current mayor Eric Johnson, who described Johnson's mission and purpose.
You look at Eddie Bernice Johnson, all the things she accomplished, all the legislation that she passed, all the racism that she overcome, and think, how did she did it? It was the work. Eddie bathed in that hard work.
She loved Dallas, Texas. She loved the state of Texas. And I'm here to tell you, maybe above all of it, she loved Black people. She loved us.
The 30th Congressional District for Eddie Bernice Johnson for the past 30 years sits right here in the heart of Black and Brown Dallas. And for so many here today, a simple thank you. In Oak Cliff, Steve Pickett, CBS News, Texas.
Well, President Biden didn't speak Monday night. He had worked closely with Congresswoman Johnson on a variety of issues during the past 3 decades. They had a special bond. When Mr. Biden ran for president, Congresswoman EBJ, as she was known, was one of the first elected officials in our area to endorse him in July of 2019. This was months before he came to Dallas in March of 2020 for a campaign rally on the night before the Super Tuesday primary. They took photos backstage. In a statement after her death, the president praised her legacy and their relationship. Quote, "She and I worked together throughout her 30 years in Congress, and I've always been grateful for her friendship and partnership." He also said she had an unwavering dedication to the people of North Texas. When the Congresswoman was honored in late 2022 with an official portrait at the U.S. Capitol, the president sent a plaque of the Chips and Sciences Act she helped pass to boost semiconductor chip production in the U.S. She also helped pass the infrastructure bill earlier that year. The Congresswoman received an official portrait because she was a chair of a committee, in this case the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and she served as the first African-American woman to be a chair of that committee. She also backed then Senator Biden's crime bill, which passed in 1994. 2 years ago, after Johnson announced she was retiring at the end of her term, she told me that she didn't want to change committee assignments and wanted to stay on the Science Committee and the Transportation Committee.
I noticed that people who had been there or most effective had been on those same committees time after time. It's always something to learn. And so I worked with every governor, every department of transportation, leaders and board members in the state for as long as I've been there. And I've learned a lot. I didn't even know what a 100-year flood was before I went to Washington, but I've found it out now. And I must say, too, that taking time to learn and do my homework has been very helpful to me.
Johnson told me during interviews that she took pride in all the homework and research she did on behalf of her constituents, and that to her, being a member of Congress was not a glamour job. On Tuesday night, the downtown Dallas skyline was lit up in yellow to honor Congresswoman Johnson. The city of Dallas said it represented the yellow rose of Texas, which symbolizes resilience. An effort is underway to hold a recall election of Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson. On January 5th, the Dallas man filed with the city secretary a notice of intent to circulate a petition for this. The city secretary tells CBS News Texas the man, Devontae Peters, has 60 days to gather the signatures and that the deadline is March 5th. He will need 103,595 verified signatures to make that happen. We reached out to Mayor Johnson's chief of staff for a statement, but we didn't hear back. In the meantime, the mayor has announced the first members of the Republican Mayors Association Advisory Board. The mayor created the association after he announced in September that he is switching from the Democratic to the Republican Party and that he intends to vote in the Republican primary on Super Tuesday, March 5th. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has appealed to the Texas Supreme Court to block an effort to force him to take a deposition in the whistleblower lawsuit against the Attorney General's office. This civil lawsuit is being brought by 4 of his former top officials who went to the FBI more than 3 years ago with allegations of bribery. The case led to his impeachment in the Texas House last year and to his trial, where he was acquitted by the Texas Senate. An appeals court in Austin ordered Paxton to be deposed, but in a filing at the Supreme Court, the Attorney General's office said because 3 of the plaintiffs had previously agreed to settle this case, the lower court had no authority to order the deposition. The state legislature, though, didn't fund the settlement, and the plaintiffs want to proceed with their lawsuit. Governor Greg Abbott's campaign has announced he raised $19 million between July and December of last year. That includes $6 million in his office holder account that will be available for the governor to spend on conservative candidates who he is backing. The governor has $32 million in his main campaign account. Coming up, we go one-on-one with Democratic State Representative Carl Sherman of DeSoto about his campaign for the U.S. Senate seat here in Texas. Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas. We'll be back in a moment. One of the biggest races in Texas this year is for U.S. Senate, where Republican incumbent Ted Cruz is seeking his 3rd term. 9 Democrats are running in the Super Tuesday primary March 5th. We went one-on-one with State Representative Carl Sherman of DeSoto and asked him why he's giving up his safe seat in the Texas House to run for U.S. Senate.
You look at the political landscape of what's happening now in this country, I may be in a safe seat, but this is not a safe place where we are. And for me, and my process of deliberating is one that takes some prayer and meditation. And after talking to my wife, Michelle, and our children, all 5 of our children, about this, and also speaking with friends and folks that I trust their advice, and the final voice that I heard in regards to this was that this was something that I needed to do with my background as a small town Texas city manager and suburban mayor, as well as someone who has run business and someone who is now a senior pastor. I felt that it was important that we have representation for all Texans and someone who has passion for the city. And the bottom line is, Jack, we have to win. And when I say we have to win, I mean Texans. Texans have to win, not special interests, not Washington lobbyists or political insiders. But we as Texans must have a representative who's willing to work and fight for their issues and their concerns. That's why I'm running.
And so let me ask you, why do you believe Democrats should vote for you over the 8 others who are in this race?
Well, this is about the general election, really. When you get to the general election, who can win? Who can win the general election? So it's not just about Democrats. It's not just about understanding the issues that really matter, like the rising costs of prices in the grocery store and the impact of inflation overall and the concerns that we have with our immigration policy. But this is about making sure you've got a candidate who will be attractive to those sensible voters who want to ensure that Texas is not left out in the cold.
If you're elected, what are your top priorities?
Yeah. I think that we must focus on the economy, on inflation, the impact of inflation. And while things seem to be curbing in the right direction, the cost of groceries is still high. We have to address those issues, and that's what I'm looking to address as priority one to ensure that folks can actually live on the income that they have. And secondly, I believe that we must address issues that are germane to a livable wage. And that's something that I've got experience in working on the local level. Also, we've got the issue of health care. You know, I've been fighting along with others like Senator Nathan Johnson to ensure that we expand Medicaid. We have to do this. There's no reason that Texans should lose $10 billion every year going back to the federal government. And we have the state that has the most uninsured Texans. And that's a problem when people are dying because of lack of quality health care. I was just on the phone last night late with one of the executives for Parkland Hospital and looking at the uncompensated hospital care cost impact. For Parkland Hospital, it's about $1.4 billion a year. Overall, for the health industry, hospitals, the cost is $27 billion each year. That means that our hospitals are being crippled by the impact of folks who can't pay for health care. And that, what does that do for the rural hospitals? Closures. And so these are issues that I think we have to focus on. And then, there are so many concerns that we have right now that I'm concerned about. The immigration policy is one. It's a broken policy. It's one that administration after administration, we seem to not have the capacity or the compassion to address this issue. It's an economic issue for me, and it's a humanitarian issue.
My last question to you, and I appreciate your time, is just about the campaign itself. You're running statewide. I went back to check campaign finance records with the Federal Election Commission, and it says that you've raised nearly $83,000. How are you going to be able to get your message out, not only in North Texas, where you're from, but in all the other large areas across the state of Texas?
And that report that you're citing is certainly our last report. It's not the most updated numbers, but you're right, Jack. Our campaign has never been about raising millions of dollars. It has been about raising millions of Texans. This is not a campaign that's supported by Washington politicals, Washington insiders. This is a campaign that is working with the people of Texas. And so, as I engage, driving and going all across the state of Texas, I'm finding that whether it's in the faith based community or local elected officials and the locals in the community, we are getting support because they understand this is about raising the concerns of all Texans and leaving no one out in the cold. We have to have a representative who will champion their concerns, someone who understands that this is a job that you've been given to do the work, not to blame the other side, but to focus on the problem and the people. I love crafting policy that comports to humanity, that addresses the issues of those people who are not allowed a seat at the table. And you know what else, Jack? We need a senator who will really, really believe and follow through on term limits. I don't think that someone should take this position and stay in it for a lifetime.
You can watch our full interview with Representative Sherman on our website, cbsnewstexas.com. That's all for Eye on Politics this week. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jack Fink, and I hope to see you again next week. You're watching CBS News Texas.